Do, 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 ba, 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 da, boom. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go now. Way early today on the stream. If Susan decides to send out notifications, I wonder how many of you guys are up, about, and near your computers. Although, I realize that not everybody in the world is on the exact same time zone. It's 20 of 12 where I am. Boy, I am not your kind. That made me, just reading your screen name, I don't know why. Instead of kind, I got thinking, it immediately flashed back to South Park. And I am not your buddy, pal. Hey, Roxas, Uzan from France. Oh, very cool. Concept Eds. Should have school at 200K. We had at 100K. We had a bunch of. We had that suggestion bandied about quite a bit. Gabriel's in. Ivan's here from Serbia. I like this. I like the international. It's one of my favorite things about the live streams in general. Just the international flavor of it all. Are you guys Just out of curiosity, are you guys getting notifications? Hi, Gaming Toad. Are you getting notifications, or are you just finding the stream and recommend it or something? I'm just curious. Fuck, 300K then. That was from Dario. He says, nice thumbnail. That was a movie I started shooting years ago, and we just couldn't get everything together we needed to complete it. It was called The Legend of D Pouch, and that's the D Pouch character. He was the world's most obnoxious superhero. All right, David. I'll adopt all of you. Hey, Master 7. Zoom 6 with love from Saudi Arabia. Very cool. Oh, Manslayer. This is Manslayer, so goddamn funny. Manslayer's eternal legacy will always be, of course, will bang, okay? But he's just, everything he does is just so funny. You did get a notification, Uzan? That's cool. Curtis, remember, the life can be tough vids? No, I don't. The life can be tough vids? You're talking about the compilation ones? Uh, you do get notifications, Ivan? Yeah. Well, a lot of people are subscribed. That's just the nature of the YouTube beast. Is regardless whether people are subscribed or not. Not just here, everywhere. Any YouTuber, notifications are always just kind of like, maybe we will, maybe we won't. Braxton's out at college, Riley. React to Hunter x Hunter. You have to be kidding me. Hunter x Hunter is like one of my all-time favorite anime. I watched that, reacted to that ages ago. It's one of the best ever. It and One Piece are right up there together. Hunter x Hunter is just goddamn. That storytelling was phenomenal, and I to this day, while it's hard for me to pick favorites, I will say as far as individual arcs, so far the Chimera Ant arc is my favorite anime arc. Period. um, Brandon Rogers videos will be coming up when I get to them. Dragon Ball Z was great, Gabriel. Yeah, Dragon Ball Z. Well, of course, Dragon Ball Z is just pure legend. Yeah, we know, Ivan. We know about the subscriptions. It's all back to YouTube. Um, it's been a minute. Oh, well, good to have you back, Badger. Laura. Yeah, well, that's the topics for today. For those of you who don't know, I see we've got a big international crew. Fuck off, train. Tomorrow in Virginia, and we touched on this in an earlier stream. Tomorrow in Virginia, there are potentially, sounds like thousands of gun rights supporters coming into town because Virginia, the governor there, Ralph Northam, has, and the Democratic House they have there, the Democratic Congress, have started implementing some of the most aggressive anti-gun legislation in the country. And for many years, the gun rights groups have said, there's a line that we're not going to allow to be crossed because you're trampling on our constitutional rights. And Virginia has become the flashpoint for that confrontation. And it could get dicey. I mean, they got, the governor there, I don't like Northam. I think a lot of this is done just because he's trying to get over the blackface scandal. He wants to ingratiate himself more with the far left because they all turned on him because he was apparently a racist at one point. If you believe in the blackface trope equaling racism, but he's already declared a state of emergency because apparently he hasn't given any proof of this, but there were threats that were received out there against the Capitol, and so they've got the state police barricading everything up and creating pens. Apparently, you would assume to detain people, and it could get ugly because he's declared a no gun zone in the area of the Capitol. But outside of that area, you can bet there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of guns. That would be my guess. So it's gonna get interesting. Dragon says, what's next on the Goosh? At $5 level, just to update anyone who might not know. I have to look them up myself. Well, I think everybody knows, especially with the video that just went out today on the YouTube channel, what the current videos are. And then what is it? At the $1 level next we've got Demon Slayer and Trigun, and then Bleach is coming at the $5 level next. I'm Not Your Kind says, I feel bad for the parents of Sandy Hook shooting. I can't imagine what they were going through besides funeral brochures. Yeah, well, sure, you feel terrible for anybody that loses their child in any way, without question. That's the worst. Being a parent, that's about the worst thing you can imagine is outliving your kids. I have no desire to do that whatsoever. I don't want to see my kids' days come to an end. Samurai Champloo was awesome. It was on. I love Samurai Champloo. I've watched all of it. It's up at the Goosh. It's very good. Samurai Champloo had I said it throughout watching the series, had one of the best feels to it of any, as far as, it pulled you right into their world, the way it was put together. And I love the way it ends. I love the way Samurai Champloo ends. It's so bittersweet and it's so cool. Can I jump Superhuman? If you look him up, don't know who he is. I don't know what we're talking about, SP. I don't know. You're calling Niners Chiefs, Prism? For those who don't know, today are the two championship games, AFC and NFC championship game. The two winners today go to the Super Bowl. Yeah, it'd be hard to pick against you there. I don't like the Niners only because you guys know I'm a Cowboys fan, and so throughout the 80s the Niners became like the enemy. But boy, it's hard. It's all going to be on Garoppolo, I think, this time. Even though they won last week, he didn't play particularly well. I don't think he can get away with not playing particularly well again this week. He's going to have to play well. If so, I think they'll win. Tennessee has way overachieved. But man, as long as that monster Derrick Henry is running the ball for you, you always got a chance. That guy's a beast. Any of you don't watch football, the Titans have a running back that he's so much fun to watch. He's 6'5", which is ridiculously tall for a running back, and he's just a physical freak. I think I'd rather go just stand in front of the train and fight it than I would try to tackle Derrick Henry. Let me see that pee boy. Nah, those are I save that for only the most special of occasions. And plus, I have to really zoom with the camera too, so I don't want to get out the controls right now. I was just saying, Master 7, Bleach is next at the Goosh after Attack on Titan. Fairy Tail or Rurouni Kenshin. Fairy Tail doesn't get a lot of traction when we have our voting as to what's going to be next, but Rurouni Kenshin does. So it may come in soon, but Bleach is coming up next. Props to the Titans for doing so well, but yeah, I agree, Prism. Who saw that coming? And it's basically been jump on Derrick Henry's back, but whatever the case, I mean, you're running in the playoffs and in the last week of the season 180 yards a game, and defenses are stacked to try and stop the run and ain't doing a goddamn bit of good. That monster just runs right through them. Igor, Curtis, what's going on in Virginia? We're just talking about it, Igor. It's the governor there and the in the last election, the Democrats took control of both chambers of their Congress, and so they've begun trying to implement some of the most restrictive gun regulations in the nation. And now tomorrow, gun rights groups and people who are just big pro Second Amendment supporters from all over the country are descending on Virginia to protest. And they're hoping it's just going to be a protest. But again, the governor has already declared a state of emergency, and they got all kinds of barricades up around. And apparently some legislator in Virginia is going to be kept in a safe house all day. And so basically what it amounts to is a lot of people are saying it could be a flashpoint for the beginnings of a civil war of some level or another. And it's possible. I mean, that would be the extreme result. But with the way tensions are right now, I wouldn't say anything's I wouldn't say anything is out of reach. The Virginia threats are ridiculous. You can fight regulations without threatening violence. These people are going to the Capitol are fucking terrifying. Well, you can't say, that's too general, Prism. Some of the people going to the Capitol might be terrifying, but tens of thousands of them that say they're going are encouraging no violence, and they simply want to protest and make their numbers seen and their message heard. But within them, there's some scary people. Yes, there's some, but it's a lot. I'm not sticking up for them, but nobody can be surprised. Nobody has the right to be surprised, because for years these militia groups and everything have said, if you try and cross a line on that Second Amendment on us, this is what we'll do. And now they're doing it, and everybody's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Well, of course you got to do what you got to do. If you're Northam and the Democrats in Virginia, do what you got to do, but don't be surprised that this is the fallout. They've announced that for ages. What happens is I think people get too much swept up into the social media persona, or the social media take on things, and you have people on Twitter going, yeah, it's just a bunch of southern fat hillbillies sitting on their couch will hide in mom's basement when it comes. No, it isn't. It's a lot of ex-military and a lot of people who do nothing but train for this type of engagement. They're not fat do-nothings on the couch. They're kind of scary people that have been waiting for an opportunity like this to try and stem what they feel is a tide that is going against them. So, I don't know how anybody is surprised by this happening. I'm not sure. Kind says all Trump can do is show his PP for peace. I don't know if that would bring peace though or not, pal. I'm not gonna go out on a limb and say that. Omega says my mom will be very sad from the Niners one. She's a Green Bay fan. I got several friends who are Green Bay fans. My one buddy is a Niners fan. He's moved to Florida now, so I don't get to see him as much. But yeah, I've got several friends who are Packers fans. So for me, it's, being a Cowboys fan, you're not a fan of either of them. So I don't really have a rooting interest. I mean, I'm going to watch the game. I'll enjoy the game, but I don't have a hard rooting interest there. Originally, it would have been easy for me to say I'm rooting for Kansas City because I like the Chiefs. But boy, it's hard to root against Derrick Henry. But I'll probably root for the Chiefs. Excuse me. Let's see. Igor says, well, so you're on about riots, protests, and shit. I gotta say, no protest riot will be as bad and violent as 1992 LA riots. I mean, they brought in the National Guard for that. I would like to think you're right, Igor, that none could be as bad as that. But and again, don't get me wrong, it's nothing I'm rooting for. I'm just stating the facts. With as inflamed as tensions are right now, see, and if anybody missteps, all that's got to happen, and this is what you got to be so careful of, if things start to get out of hand, because now you have supposedly, we'll wait and see, Antifa showing up. Now, if Antifa does show up and they start to antagonize the gun rights group, and there's a flare-up, all that's got to happen is a police officer feel threatened, or somebody in charge of security feel threatened. If somebody fires a shot, who knows what happens from there, because it'll reverberate through the country. All you got to have happen, even if it's an accident, is one, and that's what I fear, is one of the gun rights people getting shot in an area where they said, you can't bring your weapons, and we're going to have a security force there. Somebody makes that mistake, and then you'll have the whole nation with people in the streets. That's where it could get scary. Uzan says, reminds me of the massacre for the Charlie Hebdo in France. Yes, that was over the comic, right? The comic depicting Muhammad. Yeah, it's very depressing. Yes, it is. Yes, I remember that distinctly. Prism says, my uncle is a Green Bay fan, but I really don't want to see them win again. Cowboys always play terrible against the Packs. Yes, they do. Rodgers of a potential Super Bowl. Yep. Yeah, they did. Well, Garrett's gone now. Let's see if that helps. It can't hurt. It can't possibly hurt. Him, not your kind, says surprise entrant for the 2020 Royal Rumble. Boy, who's going to be a surprise entrant? Certainly not me. I don't. I've had enough beatings. Although I would get in the ring again once more if opportunity came. What you said just reminded me of the shot heard across the world. Yeah, Isaac, and that's again. Don't get me wrong. That's not something I'm predicting. It's something that is a worst case scenario. And when tensions are that high and you're dealing with that many people and again, so many people just outraged, mistakes happen. And that's all that's got to happen. That's what I fear most is somebody in the security force side is going to feel threatened to do whatever, or just simply make a mistake, fire a shot. And if somebody from the gun rights groups gets hit, that'll be it. That'll be it. I think again, throughout the nation, you'll see people in the streets and there's going to be major problems. Omega, I agree. He says, someone gets shot tomorrow, it's going to be on like Donkey Kong. I have no doubt. Yeah. Because even the people that aren't there, and that's one thing that having the instant exchange of ideas and the fury and the rage and everything that the internet provides, it's throughout the nation. I mean, the people, the gun rights activists that can't be there are just as vocal as are the people that are going. I mean, it would be, I don't know. You have no idea where it would lead. Yeah, that's true, Isaac. They say that history usually repeats itself. It's true. You root for it to not do that. You root for cooler heads to prevail. But again, all it takes that's what I'm afraid of, is it takes one mistake. I don't think civil war is likely, Prism says. I don't think it's likely. I agree with you there. I think there's a potential for it, but I don't think it's likely, at least not yet. People don't understand war. Vets don't want war, even if it's over something like this. I just think most people value societal order too much. Riots at worst. Yeah, I think that's true. I think as far as percentage-wise, as far as, like you said, likely or unlikely, yes, I think what you outlined is way, way, way more likely. But I think we always have to be aware of, and hopefully the people in positions of authority are aware of the worst case scenarios as well. What I outlined, I would consider the worst case scenario. I think what you outlined is much more likely event. I'm not sure. Kind of says react to LA Noir VR by GTA series videos. Well, I'm not looking for any recommendations right now, because again, we got a ton of stuff we're reacting to, between keeping everybody posted at the YouTube channel about what goes on at the Goosh, and then our pal Devil Artemis. And I still got that. I've got a bunch of videos lined up. I still want to get to that. The video that's the third in that series. You know, the Superhero Bowl, Supervillain Bowl, and now the third one. So right now, I don't have any spots to add on any other reaction vids. Our rage is the fire, internet is the powder. Yeah, well put, Uzan. That's pretty much it. Civil war is under 1%, in my opinion. A lot of things would have to go wrong for that. I would put the percentage a little higher than that, but still, it's a long shot. But it depends too. If you're talking civil war beginning tomorrow, then yes, I would say it's probably under 1%. If you're talking about a civil war of some sort eventually taking place from the events that are beginning tomorrow, then I would put it at substantially higher than that. Still a long shot, but I'd put it closer to 5%. Would I rather meet Filthy Frank or Brandon Rogers? I don't think there's a rather there. I'd love to meet either one of them. Prism, I was so happy to see the Ravens lose, mostly because I live in Baltimore and the fans are worse than Eagles fans. Really? Even more over the top than them? I was shocked the Ravens went out like that. Man, I was surprised. They were playing such good football. Um, Civil war shouldn't be needed. Igor says social media can ruin someone's life way better than any conflict or gun ever could. That's true. And to be perfectly honest with you, Igor, if civil war takes place, it's largely because of social media. That's what gets. I mean, it's obviously the act of coming after guns that has the gun rights advocates upset. But a lot of what keeps this push on to come after guns is social media. Unfortunately, we know Twitter specifically. Twitter is a bastion for the far left. It's a home for the far left. They have a huge presence on Twitter, and for whatever reason, you got it. This is how we got into the whole battle, which is could potentially be the reason that Democrats lose the presidential election, is because they went so deep into the battle of free stuff. Who can promise more free stuff became a thing because of Twitter mobs. It's scary that the politicians pay that much attention to a minority who have a majority on a specific social media platform. Omega says, I firmly believe that we're at the point where the government needs to put their foot down and say, this is what we're doing about guns, and that's the end of it. I don't think that's an option, though, Omega. That's basically what, and to a certain degree, they're trying to do in Virginia. But, okay, when you say that, though, it depends on what they're talking about doing. Because on top of everything else, what we haven't mentioned yet about tomorrow is there's going to be resulting court battles as well. A lot of what Virginia plans on doing could get struck down in the Supreme Court and get overturned. Everything they've done could get overturned anyway. But the government putting their foot down and just saying, okay, whatever. All semi-automatic weapons are hereby illegal. That would send the country into civil war. Then I would say the percentage of that happening were well over 50%. So I don't think that's necessarily a good call. When government puts their foot down and says something, it begins to start to sound like a monarchy then. The big thing here, and the whole crux of the matter here, is you have the Second Amendment. You have a constitutional amendment that you have to take into account. Typically, obviously, when, in America, when you're talking about, I want life this way, you want life that way, it's not as complex because there isn't a constitutional amendment guaranteeing a certain right. Now, of course, within that amendment, there's tons of room for interpretation, which is why we have the Supreme Court. And so for government to put their foot down and say, okay, this is how, without going through the Supreme Court once again, this is how we see things, this is how it's going to be done, I think that would be a powder keg that would explode immediately. Let's see. I didn't see, Tom, I didn't see who you're talking about. Attention seekers can't forget. I didn't see who you're talking about initially. Let's see. Take the Vic Mignogna incident, fake claims, and the kick Vic side just don't stop even if the guy was fired and they're now harassing his successor just because they're friends. Oh, are they? I didn't even know about that with his successor being a friend of his and everything. I didn't get deeply into that. I remember when the whole thing took place. And yeah, with that, like you say, Igor, that's a good example of social media run amok. Absolutely. Martin, get shot this America. Oh, excuse me. Oh, Vic soon lost his case. It's over. Let's move on. He did lose the case. See, I didn't even follow it all the way through. I knew what was going on at the time, but I didn't follow it to its conclusion. So I'm behind on that one. Oh, and he's appealing, Tom says. A man repeatedly raped a minor. Man, I know I shouldn't say it, but I'm not sure what you're saying, Milog. Impressed with what? No notification for you either, Wolverine? Yeah, I think they were sparse today. Some of the gang got them. It seems like, too, we're going to start paying closer attention to this. I wonder if time of day has anything to do with who gets notifications. Because did you guys notice, those of you that were in right from the start, did you notice today that the people that got notifications, a lot of them were international? We're not in the U.S.? Because we had people coming in from Serbia and France and throughout the different parts of the world. I wonder if because I'm streaming... Oh, the reason I'm streaming earlier, guys, is we have friends coming over, and we're going to watch some of they're going to stay over to watch at least some of the playoff games today, and I wanted to be able to have a chat because I had promised yesterday we would. Plus, I enjoy doing these, so I had to start it earlier. They're bringing lunch over. They're bringing some pizzas and stuff. So if they get here while I'm streaming, I'll have to duck out. You know what we should do? I honestly hate both sides of this. They're both so far from the real problem. Oh, I agree with too, Omega. I completely agree. And we touched on that. What was it day before yesterday? I think we were talking about the biggest issue I have when it comes to the mass shootings, and I said this before, is why are we so unwilling? I understand everybody's got a political stake, so as soon as there's, say, a school shooting, everybody wants to jump on the gun grabbers want, if you made access to guns more difficult, this would stop happening. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course it wouldn't stop happening. But can you make a case that maybe somewhere down the line, some of these things would have taken a different form somehow? Sure, you can. But what bothers me is when this first happens, why is that the knee-jerk reaction? And why is the reaction not, what the fuck is wrong that's making kids want to shoot their classmates? That to me is the penultimate. That's the disturbing point. Because again, when I was a kid, guns were everywhere. We had them in our schools with us. We used to bring them in for show and tell, literally. And nobody was shooting each other. Something has happened societally. And that we got to figure that shit out. Because even if you take the guns away, somebody that bent on destruction will find a way to kill. USA should definitely pipe down on gun laws. It's so bad coming from someone from the UK. It's Dan. I don't know what you mean by pipe down. You mean crank down on gun laws, make gun laws more restrictive, or pipe down? Back off them. I'm not sure which way you mean, Dan. It's not that we're unwilling. It's just that mental health isn't the only issue. Government can't do anything about mental health other than working into Medicaid. Oh, I wouldn't say. And the thing of it is, Prism, though, here's my point. When you see a school shooting, what percentages do you see in conversation? What percentage is conversation about how do we do something to get kids to want to stop killing other kids, as opposed to, hey, take away all the guns, you're not getting my guns conversation? It's got to be at least 100 to 1. And that's to me a large part of the issue. And that's minor with a pickaxe. I forgot to write that part. Okay. Well, that's why I wondered, because a miner with a pickaxe is MINER. And I was like, he went after a minor OR. It's like, I don't know why that would be good. There's already police at schools. Yeah, well, a lot of schools have had police presence for some time. Hell, way before the rash of school shootings started, there were a lot of schools that had metal detectors and stuff, a lot of inner city schools. Canada is a no-gun country, and their school shooting count is at like 3 or 4, so maybe it's somehow connected, or maybe it's societally connected. So what you're saying is, if the guns are easier or more difficult to get, then the kids who want to kill their classmates will just decide not to? You don't think that maybe it's societal differences, just like America's societal differences, that when I was a kid, guns were way, way more easily accessible than they are even now, and nobody was shooting schools, but now they are? Same country. You don't have to go apples and oranges, two different countries. It's apples to apples. Same exact country, just separated by 45 years of time and an entirely different structure as far as the willingness to commit violence. That's what I think it is, though. I think it's societal. That's why I don't get, if you outlaw whatever guns you want to outlaw, if they want to outlaw, even if it were all automatic weapons, which is the vast majority of guns that are out there, it's not going to stop the problem, because the problem is kids want to kill other kids. What doesn't get talked about, after the Florida shooting, a lot of people think that was the last big major school shooting in America. There wasn't. There was one in Texas. Got 10 or 12 kids, I believe. But the reason nobody talks about it is because, A, the Texas kids and everybody involved was pretty much pro-Second Amendment, so they didn't have activists coming out of that situation. But even more so, the shooter used a handgun and a shotgun. Two things that would not be would would not even be addressed in the gun reform laws that they want to talk about. So as soon as it doesn't fit the narrative, well, that school shooting, let's just forget that one happened. But they still talk incessantly about what happened in Florida. That's the only difference. The kid in Florida used the big, scary looking AR, and the kid in Texas used a shotgun and a handgun. It just, again, it's all about narrative in America. I don't think that bullying is an excuse for shooting, Igor says. I was bullied as a kid and didn't want to shoot others. This shouldn't be a reason to commit murder. Just beat them up for fuck's sake. Well, I think it could be a small part for a certain number of people, but you're right, Igor, because again, if you go back to when I was a kid, not only were there guns all over, nobody was shooting them up, bullying was much more prevalent because you didn't have any of the anti-bullying programs like you do now. There was no even concern about it. Bullying when I was a kid was just looked at like a rite of passage. Nobody got upset about it. Nobody really did anything to prevent it. It just, oh yeah, suck it up, fight back, that type of thing. So you're right in that regard. Why didn't bullying set kids off 45 years ago? Excuse me. Pablo says, you can ban guns but not violence. Where there's a will, there's a way. I agree with that. If someone wants to harm a bunch of people, they'll find a way. They'll take a plunger at someone's ear and rip their brain out. Well, I've always said, Pablo, I refuse to go into the list, especially on a public forum. But it doesn't take much imagination to figure out that, especially in an enclosed area, if you want to do a lot of harm, there are more effective ways than a gun. Way more. Way more. And again, I'm not we're not gonna have that discussion again on a public forum, not as far as listing them, but I'm sure you guys are able to imagine what I'm talking about. Omega says, let's make it clear, if it's guns, it will be something else. We need to stop bullying and pay more attention to kids' mental state. Yeah, we got to find out. I agree, Omega. We got to find out what it is. Is it their mental state? You also have to look at the medications that kids are on routinely now. Is some of that having something to do with it? Again, when we were kids, the term ADHD didn't even really exist. Nobody knew what it was or anything. It wasn't attention deficit disorder. It was just you were being a little jerk. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to diagnose. It's a very good thing. But are some of those medicines having something to do with it? It just doesn't seem like it gets researched enough. Is there something within some of these antidepressant medicines, these medicines for behavioral modification, that over time or even maybe instantly can affect someone's brain to the point where they see no other option in expressing their outrage than killing a bunch of other people? There's a lot of things to look at. And until we figure out why they're killing, it really doesn't matter what you do about guns. They just give kids pills now for everything. Yeah, they do, ZM. And again, I that's something I tread lightly on, because I think modern medicines also help a lot of people, help a lot of kids. But I think they are overprescribed somewhat. It seems like there are some cases anywhere where it's like a kid acts out and it's like, well, let's put him on a drug. Well, sometimes kids just act out. There's not anything. They don't even have a mental issue other than they're just angry about something. So you'd like to think that drugs are always a last resort, but I would love to see if there isn't some sort of chemical connection there. Let's see. My grandma blames GTA for all this gun violence and Street Fighter for fist violence and Need for Speed for car violence. No matter how much Monopoly she made me play, I still suck at finance. Yeah, I've never been a believer, Milog, in the whole video games thing, because again, I go back to my own childhood. We didn't have video games, and the things that we imagined to play were every bit as demented and violent as anything you see on a video game. We would play cowboys and Indians, and the Indian would, you would scalp the cowboy, and there was blood. You'd play war, and there was blood and gore and violence in your imagination. But even back then, we knew we were playing. We knew the difference between what we were doing in real life, and one didn't blend in with the other. And I think the same is true nowadays. If a video game can cause someone to go out and kill a bunch of people, there are a litany of issues besides the fact that that kid played a video game. Video games don't turn normal people into killers. It's just that there's something wrong with someone anyway, And then you find out that one of my favorite things though is when you have a school shooting, they always go into the history of the kid and see what games he played. Well, do you know that 70% of school shooters have played first person shooter video games? Coincidence? Oh, and it sounds really impressive until you realize that if you take the overall number of male children between like the ages of 13 and 17 or whatever it may be, and 80% of them play, that statistic means nothing. The fact that this kid that went ballistic and killed a bunch of people played the video games means nothing because most all of them are playing it anyway. By the way, nice thumbnail. Thanks, Nupped Up. That was for any of you who just came in. That was just I always look for different things to post as thumbnails when we just have the conversation videos, and that was from a movie we were shooting years ago, and we never got to complete called The Legend of Deep Pouch. Yeah, Itsunagi. Call of Duty did it. Oh, of course, media. Yeah. um, at least they're not so reliable to grenades. Let's see. Prism says they get so cocky and douchey anytime the Ravens are good. Some of them are good, but most of them are so annoying. Plus, like, all my friends are Ravens fans. They always dick on the Cowboys, so ha ha. Prism, if you guys didn't catch it earlier, he's from the Baltimore area, and he was not sad to see the Ravens be dispatched from the playoffs. And most everybody was picking them to win it all. Brother, he says, situation is like what we spoke about the other day with colleges able to have students taking out loans easier. Doctors are prescribing more medicines nowadays so that allows pharmaceuticals to profit. You're not wrong, Brother E. Not wrong at all. And again, I don't know this to be a fact. This is just conjecture on my part. But it just seems coincidental that along the time that things like this started happening was also along the same time when medicating kids for behavioral issues became the thing to do. It just seems like a coincidence to me. A lot of our problems in this country had Trump involved, or that's what it seems like. Well, you got to remember, though, too, in fairness, Armani, no matter what issue affects America, the president's always going to be a large part of it. But more so this one, because you do have the media itself is in the worst shape it's ever been in my lifetime, to where that most all major media outlets slant one way or the other, and they spin stories. They intentionally leave information out of stories, things that true journalists from the past would never even dream of doing. So, of course, when you have the anti-Trump media, they're going to connect that any way they can. Now, again, the pro-Trump media does the same things. They will intentionally leave out pertinent details in their stories and their articles too to make him look better. So it's on that, and you guys know that's what my education's in. That's where my history was in journalism, and it just makes me sick that journalistic integrity is pretty much gone. Let's see. Trump isn't the cause of all our problems. Trump is a symptom of a lot of them. I agree with that too, Prism. I do think he's what's dividing most of us, though. He just flares up tension about everything. I think to call him divisive is certainly not incorrect, but the other side of that is I think he's divisive because he just says what's on his mind, and if he believes something, just like with this whole thing in Virginia, they're trying to say, well, he's trying to start a civil war because he tweeted something along the lines of, this is what happens when Democrats, when you elect Democrats, they start to assault your Second Amendment rights. And I think they're going off the deep end to say that's inciting a civil war. He's stating what is actually the obvious. In other words, he's saying if you elect Democrats, you have a chance of getting your Second Amendment rights, in your opinion, infringed on, and he's not wrong. So that's inflaming. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to say it's inflaming when it's a fact. Omega Project says if video games made someone want to kill others, then they were likely already sick in the head. That's not the problem. That's where I am, Omega. It's, again, and I don't think any of the school shooters or any mass shooters have left something in a note, or the ones that survived have said at any point that it was a video game that caused them to do it. It's just something the media likes to run with. And again, when you're talking a school shooter, a school-age kid, who most all of them have been male, the vast majority of kids across the country in that sector all play those video games. So of course the shooter's going to have played it too. So to say that, well, this kid was shot up his school because of what he learned on Call of Duty, the obvious question is, well, what about the 20 million other kids that are playing it and are just perfectly normal, well-adjusted kids? What's the difference? Oh, yeah, the kid that shot up people had a lot of psychological issues besides that. Maybe chemical imbalances, who knows? But that's what we need to look into. Let's see. If these kids may have poor mental states, they played Doom for 5 minutes. The Game Changers? I heard something about that. I don't even remember where. That name's familiar, though. Let's see. Children meds are experimental as far as doses go, Pablo says. Their levels skyrocket when on these meds, and the one time they don't take it or take it late, their levels drop lower than they were before. Really? See, that I don't have a lot of knowledge in, Pablo, and it just, and again, that's why I say for me, it's just purely conjecture. It just seemed coincidental that you had things like school shootings and violent kids acting out more coincided with society's willingness and the medical field's willingness to give kids drugs for pretty much anything, any type of issues. It just seemed like a hell of a coincidence to me. Brother E says, the biggest issue here is schools need to be teaching kids the importance of using social media and bullying. Sure. Kids are more prone to kill because they are overwhelmed and need proper guidance. I think so. I agree with that. But the thing is, too, Brother E, when you're willing to take that extra step and go from being enraged to actually taking the lives of others, there's something even more involved. Obviously, there's a mental emotional issue there, because someone who would be in a normal, quote unquote, normal mental and emotional state is not going to kill a bunch of other people. So there's got to be something there, whether it's maybe they just genuinely can't handle life, or is it medications they're on? Did it create an imbalance? So we got to find out. Martin says active shooters are Yamchas that got their girlfriend stolen by a Vegeta. that Martin, that's actually, I think, psychologically, that's a good analogy. That pretty much outlines it right there. Ansel says, I feel sad for Cowboy Cerrone. That was well, his beating didn't last long, at least, Ansel. It was just 40 seconds and he was done. That was nasty. I didn't see that coming. I wasn't sure who I thought was going to win the fight. I thought it could go either way, but I never saw McGregor taking him out in 40 seconds like that. Spice Kid in? Attaboy, Brax. They may take our guns, but they can't take our anime. and that's what's really important. I'd love to call in one day and talk to current events of DC. Stuff's crazy down here, Cheyenne says. Oh, I can only imagine, Cheyenne. Yeah, that's true. You're in crazy central. For those who don't know, Cheyenne goes to Georgetown, which is down in DC. And yeah, that's the central nervous point for insanity right there. Nup Tup. Love how you can have lighthearted discussions for anime, etc., and also have much serious and thought-provoking ideas when discussing current affairs. Well, thanks, Nup Tup. I appreciate that, but that's as much on you guys as it is on me. I mean, what you guys contribute to the conversations and everything are what keep them so interesting, and certainly there's lots of gaps in my knowledge in whatever we may be talking about, and you guys fill them in. I appreciate that, but again, that's as much props to you guys as it is to me. That's why I love having these conversations so much. Macroll says they lash out in an extreme manner without thinking about the consequences. They end up in jail for the rest of their lives because they didn't know how to deal with bullies. I think, Macroll, at the very heart of it, yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think there's more to it besides that. But yeah, I think that is at the heart of the matter. It's certainly a jumping off point for a lot of them, I think, yes. Prism, I go to school by DC too, actually. Of course, I'm not actually in the city, so I don't know for sure, but it's generally pretty calm. Is it? Well, I think Cheyenne's talking about, not necessarily violence-wise. I think she's talking about just the overall demeanor there and the level of antipathy in Washington right now. Let's see. It's Dan says, as horrible as this sounds, a lot of mass shooters do it to fit into life, and it's their only way of communicating. It's sad to think that maybe the case these horrors could be. I think, Dan, it could be that they don't know how to express their anger, their depression, whatever it may be. But I think that goes back, then that, loops back to what we were talking about, is somehow trying to figure out how to get ahead of those types of things, and how to identify people who have that potential. I don't know. It's a tough one, but for me, it's, again, we got to spend a little less time on the tool used and spend a little more time on the reason they chose to use it. Spaz Kid. Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated. Big titty anime girls. True. Which in the scales of what is truly important in the world, yeah, I get what you're saying, Brax. Hi, Morgan. Yeah, we don't think a lot of notifications went out today. As near as I can tell, I'm wondering if it does have something to do with the time, because, again, I'm on earlier than usual. It seemed like the notifications that went out were largely outside of the U.S. It's weird. I probably, even trying to make any type of rhyme or reason to how YouTube does things is probably a rabbit hole that's not even worth going down, though. So, Cheyenne says, so I actually work in analyzing and documenting mass crimes. Oh, that's cool. Many shooters do it too, as my boss puts it, to feel like James Bond. They want to feel and be invincible for once. That doesn't surprise me. I think that I would agree, Cheyenne. I think that goes right in concert with what we're talking about here. Is that feeling of being in control, of dominance? It's just a matter of trying to determine why so many more people seem to be falling into these categories that allow them to take these horrific acts than ever had in the past. Because, again, as we talked about earlier, that's why it's impossible to compare apples and oranges. Like we were talking earlier, Canada has a low rate of gun violence, England, all throughout Europe, so on and so forth. You can't they're two entirely different societies. So I don't think that's a good comparison. The thing that really gets to me, and I know I've said it before, is how our society here has changed so much. It's the exact same life. It's the exact same set of circumstances. And 45 years ago, nobody was shooting up schools with guns everywhere. You could get anytime you wanted. A lot of states, when I first moved to New Mexico back in the 80s, at that time, you could go into a gun dealer, anybody that sold guns, and just buy one. Right there, right then, cash. Oh, I want that Smith & Wesson 357. Okay, here's $200, and he walked out with it. But people weren't committing violent acts at nearly the rate they are now. So something had to happen. Omega says, I think the difference between now and when you went to school is in your day you went home and that's the end of it. Now you get through social media and can't get away from it. I think that's part of it, yeah. I think there's been a lot more breakdown of family structure as well, Omega. I agree with what you're saying. It stays with you. Now, because of social media, like Omega says, that bad day you had at school, you got to go home, you get to unwind, go out and play with your dog, whatever it is that you enjoyed, and unwind from it. Now, it stays with you on the walk home, the bus ride home, depending on where you are, because you're on your phone and you're still engaging in that same type of behavior. So I think that's very true. I think it is. And I do think that societally, families have fallen apart more too. There aren't as many families with strong parental influences, and I think that hurts a lot. I mean, there's so many families where the kids, even if both parents are still present, a lot of times, unfortunately, the parents may be there, but they're not that interested. That's unfortunate how society has turned in that respect. Pablo says, I got to go, but not before I commend you on what you're doing here. Also, I prefer watching Filthy Frank with you. he would be smart to collab with. Well, thanks, Pablo. I appreciate that, and thank you for being in while you could. Let's see. Brother E says absolutely. There's more there, and what that is social media. People go online and like to compare their life standards with others, and it results these kids feeling even worse about themselves. Oh, I agree. There's no question. I think that social media has made it so much more difficult to, I don't want to put this, to grow up with a healthy feeling about oneself. I think that's absolutely true. Morgan says, I was a toddler for Columbine, but first school shooting I remember is Virginia Tech. I was like 8, came home, was shocked to see that on the news. Yeah, and that's why it makes me insane, Morgan. Just what you're talking about. Again, I wish I could, I could bring you guys back to a visual of what I used to see in school. It would be so amazing by today's standards, because again, kids all the time, it was regular. Getting a gun for Christmas or getting a new gun for their birthday and bring it in to show everybody and passing it around. Everybody's looking at it and everything. And obviously it was unloaded because everybody knew how to handle their guns as well. It's not like, I don't want to give the impression that it was the Wild West and nobody practiced any type of safety. It was quite the opposite. Because guns were so pervasive in the community where I lived, everybody knew how to handle them properly. But they would be in the school all the time. All the time. So, in other words, if you had wanted to shoot up a school, it was easy. There were no locks on the doors like there are now, no buzzers to get in. And if you came walking up to the school with a gun, people wouldn't even give you a second look. So it was, it would have been so easy to do, but nobody was shooting up schools back then. Dylan says, was target practice a school subject? No, but I did tell the gang the other day, Dylan, I think it was 9th grade, in an English class anyway. I might have been even earlier, but we had to do a presentation. We had to get up in front of the class and show them how to do something. And my presentation was how to clean, maintain, and fire a gun. And I obviously didn't shoot it in the class, but I brought in a real gun to do the whole demonstration. And of course, nobody blinked. I mean, it was just another demonstration, and then kept the gun in my locker all day and brought it home at the end of the day. Isaac says, my history teacher last year said that it was because people were soaking in malice and contempt. What do you think this could be the reason? Well, sure. I don't think you can create those, or I don't think you can perform those acts without malice and contempt being a part of it. It's just why is there so much malice and contempt, and why is it so extreme now? Because certainly malice and contempt are not new ideas, but why has it become so extreme that people are willing to go out and kill a bunch of people? Is what we got to figure out. Nuttup, Curtis, what are your thoughts on the Las Vegas shooting? Do we to date still know why the shooter did what he did? Not as far as I know, Nuttup. That's a tough one. Obviously the guy was batshit. He'd been setting that up for some time. That's not something that he just went out one day and said, I've had it, I've snapped, I'm going to go up into a tall hotel room and shoot a bunch of people. He had very carefully orchestrated all that, been bringing the weapons in and everything. So this was a real demented individual. But if the investigation has turned up a real solid motive, we don't know what it is. Is it possible they do know and aren't sharing it? Sure. The government, if the government's too afraid that it would get one side or the other too worked up for them to keep it from us, would not surprise me at all. But it's also, and again, I'm not a conspiracy guy, it's also very possible that he obviously had his own motive, but that he never left a trace of what it may be. But we don't know what happened. Chrome says there's a lot more narcissism and self-centeredness now with the internet and constant gratification from social media. Also bad parenting. Agree on all those terms, or on all those issues. Yeah, I completely agree, Chrome. And it's sad what I see it all the time with, again, parents that are present but so detached. It's just, personally, I think that's a lot of it. We can blame a lot of different things, but I think a lot of these issues, these emotional issues especially, I think a lot of them start at home. Omega says, you can probably tell I've had this sort of conversation before. Had a kid in my high school government class, and me and him got into it on this topic once. It, it's something that when it can be done calmly and reasonably, it's a conversation that needs to take place a lot. But unfortunately, and this is why I give you guys so many props in being able to do this. Typically, what happens is as soon as you start talking about it, it's like, well, we got to get all the guns off the street, or this will never end. You're an idiot. You're a gun grabber, and the guns aren't the problem. The kids are the problem. So, and it gets nowhere because you just start calling each other names and talking about whether or not the accessibility to the guns created the incident, and then nothing gets accomplished. But that's because the conversations never seem to go in depth as to why are people doing this stuff. Brother E says, yeah, things like the Las Vegas shooting and the Ariana Grande concert shooting in London are reasons why I do not like going to music-related events anymore. They're not secured enough. They need, it's true, Brother E, and it's so difficult to adequately secure large venues like that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and the thing is, and again, I'm not going to talk about options for hurting people outside of guns. I will talk about things that have happened in the past. And look what happened with somebody who rented a truck in France. Bad people are going to do bad things. What was that? 84 people dead? That bad people will do the bad things. It's just, it is what it is. And we got to do something, anything to try and stop this seeming overflow of people that are so stressed out in life that they're willing to do things like that. Tom says, imagine a shooter live at the Wembley Stadium back in the days of Michael Jackson and Queen. Loads of people would die. Yeah, absolutely. But the same thing too, Tom, is again, we got to go back to the why, because even if you make the gun difficult to get, particularly when people are together in confined spaces, there's a lot of ways to do a lot of damage that don't involve guns. Look at the one nightclub that I don't even remember which nightclub it was. Was it set on fire, or did the fire start by an accident? But in any event, you had a lot of people in a small area. Now even a fire takes, countless lives. Chrome says, well, target practice is now a subject in schools, just as a prize one with free duck and cover training. Unfortunately, true. Sad, but true. Cheyenne says, if people want to hurt people, they will find a way to hurt people. Absolutely. I completely agree, Cheyenne. And I do think schools are getting somewhat more responsive about trying to identify these kids that could be a problem. I think they're certainly doing a much better job of it now than they have over the past 10, 15 years. But I think it can never be too much. And the thing of it is, so many schools are overwhelmed. There's just so many kids as opposed to limited staff. It's hard to keep track of every detail of every kid in that school and what they might be going through. Nope, top. Family time and good upbringing is so damn important. Couldn't agree more. Are people too busy or too ignorant, or maybe both? A lot of cases, I don't get it, Nuptup. Again, it's one thing, because we all know that about half of all marriages fail. But even when relationships go south, it's not that, because I was in a prior marriage. It's not that difficult to stay apart, for both parents to stay a solid, important part of their children's lives. It's just, I think it's a lot of the narcissism of people that they're only, even as parents, they become only concerned with what they're doing and what their next thing is going to be, and what's going on in their lives. And I ever since the breakup, it's been so hard getting back in the dating scene, and you're more worried about that than your goddamn kid. And that bothers me. I think it was Orlando, brother. I can't remember. I know it was a nightclub fire, and I can't remember. It might have, or no, Orlando was that was a shooting, wasn't it? I can't keep them straight. See, Lick says people who want guns to do bad will get them. Outlawing them completely just leaves the civilian populace less safe. I agree with that, Licks. I agree with that. Again, for an individual who wants to do bad things, like again, the Las Vegas shooter, if there were more restrictive gun laws in this country, would that have stopped him? I doubt it. He was planning that for substantial amount of time. Anything putting that much planning into it, even if you got rid of every gun in the country and started fresh, somebody like that would find a way. Just again, similar to drugs, he'd get some from across the border or something. We're not talking. They like to, when it fits their narrative, they like to characterize all mass shootings as spur of the moment. Oh, that gun was so easy to find, it made it fun because I was angry, and now it was so easy to go out there and shoot a bunch of people, and that's not the case. The Las Vegas shooting is a perfect example. That was thought out over a long period of time. When you put that much thought and effort into something, making guns a little tougher to get isn't going to stop you from killing a bunch of people when you're that devoted to it. Omega says, I'm going to have to run here pretty quick. Yeah, me too, Omega. Again, our friends will be over soon. We're going to have pizza and watch some football. Pretty quick, I have to work this afternoon, but I say this. I think there's too much pressure to have kids, whether you want to or not, which leads to a lot of parents who don't want it. I think that's true completely, Omega. I think there's a lot of social and almost peer pressure sometimes on young couples to have kids. Because and we hear it all the time. I'm sure all you guys do within your families, your extended families, whatever. And you get a younger couple, and they get married, and immediately, and it comes from the older generation a lot, and sometimes from their own peers as well. It becomes, well, thinking about having kids. It's like, well, it's something we're not sure we want to do. Oh, the joy of having children, and you're right. You get that pressure, and it's like, well, it's not for everybody. It isn't. My little sister is a perfect example of that. My little sister never had any kids, and it was because she knew that's not what she wanted to do. That's not something that fit in her life, and I completely, hugely respect that because she was aware that that's not where she wanted her life to go. There's nothing wrong with it, but you're right. A lot of people, to a lot of families, that's a big no-no. Oh no, you get, well, who's going to give me grandkids? And then you get the friends in the group. Well, then when are you going to have kids? Then Billy and Tammy here will have somebody to play with. They do get pressure. I agree with that. Hello from Russia, Alex says. We like what you do. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. See what I mean? I think a lot of notifications, depending on time of day. Now, Alex is from Russia also. We've had Serbia, Russia. I think depending on time of day tells a lot, too, about... I'm wondering if that doesn't have something to do with who gets the notifications. Cheyenne Martin, especially in the South. Yes, I agree. Southern families, that's more of a push down there. Yes, I agree with that. And forget about the stigma of having kids before marriage. God forbid. Yeah, I agree with you, Cheyenne. Yes. Not from the UK, didn't get any notification. It's just a thought, Michael. Because again, oh, excuse me, guys. Oh, got something drained in my ear. When we first started the stream, it was obvious that a ton of notifications didn't go out. But as I was saying hi to everybody, it seemed like there were a lot of people. Again, I said there was Serbia, there was Russia. It was, it was that region as well because there was France. It seemed like an unusually high number of outside the U.S. So I was just trying to make some sort of rhyme or reason to how Susan does things, and we all know, again, as I said, that's an endless rabbit hole you could go down there. Prism says it's a big thing in conservative families. I agree. I know it is in mine. Thankfully, I want like 5 kids though. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that pressure to have kids, and again, everything has exceptions, but in general, I think is more in conservative families, more in religious families. Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, thanks, Philip. YouTube hasn't been. Well, I shouldn't say this because if there's ever a way to jinx something, that would be it. YouTube hasn't been too bad with me lately. I mean, I see a lot of other people are dealing with shit. Last few months, they've been pretty much off my jock. They haven't bothered me too much, but it'll come, I'm sure. What kind of pizza, Dylan? The place we're getting it from, I love their sausage they have there. I love the sausage. I'm gonna have a sausage pizza. My favorite pizza, unfortunately, doesn't deliver to me here. I'm in upstate New York, as most of you know, and my favorite pizza place in the world is in Orlando, Florida. So I keep trying to get them to deliver, but they're real assholes about it. Because they know you're out of our range. Well, what do you mean by that? Tell me you're out of district. Get on a goddamn plane and get that thing here. Can you show us your feet? Just a person. If you want to see an old man's raggedy asshole feet, you might have some problems. My wife eats it nupped up. He says no pineapple pizza. I hope. I'll bet you they are bringing some pineapple. As a matter of fact, because my wife eats it, and our friends that are coming over, they'll eat it too. I keep telling her it's wrong. I love that woman dearly, but that's a serious mental issue she's got there with that pineapple on pizza stuff. On a more lighthearted note, went to Chick-fil-A during this god-awful snowstorm, ordered a spicy chicken tender sandwich and waffle fries, Brother E says. Picked my order and the employees were saying, my pleasure. That's so fun. Goddamn RDC World One. They're so funny with that shit. My pleasure. That's they're kicking the shit out of each other. Do you know any good... Oh, I do. Do any good food places in Midtown Manhattan? I have a favorite now because I used to be in Manhattan all the time. It's a chain of them, but the one I always used to go to, they moved it now. It's down in Penn Station. It's called Rose's Pizza. It's just a little hole in the wall down in Penn Station. I'm trying to remember. I think it's up near the... It's near the Walmart... Or I'm sorry, Walmart. Kmart end of Penn Station. That pizza's so fucking good. All I ever get there is the pizza now. That's my second favorite pizza place in the world, right after the one in Orlando. It's so good. And the toppings are fantastic. And I only get the pizza there. Now, whenever we go to New York, I have to eat there, so my wife gets dragged along too. She said she had a calzone there, said it was fantastic. All the food we've ever gotten there is ridiculously good. The ambiance is wonderful. You know, you got the smell of urine coming from the subway and everything. But it's called Rose's Pizza, Niall. Oh, it's goddamn. I mean... I'm getting wood. Well, thanks, Ray. Yeah, we're talking about the playoffs are today. We'll find out who's going to the Super Bowl today. Oh, I know that pizzeria is pretty good, but Joe's Pizza in Washington Park? I've never been there, brother. Yeah, I know Washington Park. I've never been to Joe's Pizza. Dylan says, pineapple pizza is an undescribable evil. Agreed. And all world governments must put their differences aside to defeat this evil. Luke says, oh, I love urine pizza. It's Dan always wanted to try American food. We got some good foods here. I'm not a good person to go by, though. I am the least foodie type person in the world because my tastes are so freaking limited. I'm so boring with what I eat. Have I been to Oregon? For a short time. I actually lived there in Boring. And it was. Boring, Oregon was about, boy, it was a lot of years ago. I didn't live there long. 35 minutes maybe from Portland. When I was with my ex-wife, it's going way back. This would be late 70s, early 80s. When we were together, she had family up there, and we were deciding where we wanted to set down and put in our roots. We looked into Oregon, so we were up there for a few months. Plain hamburgers, always Big Green. Do not like condiments. Sounds thrilling. Oh, it was. Would you be open to recommendations for games like play Undertale? Right now, Gamer, we got 2 games going at once, so right now, no, I'm not looking. That's why I haven't bought the new Dragon Ball game. It looks really fun. I don't think... Is Brack still with us? Spaz Kid still with us? I don't think he is. He's got it. I got to text him later today. I got to talk to him. I want to see what he thinks of it. But those of you guys in our community here that have talked to me about it, have played it, have said it's really good. But that's the only reason I don't have it yet is because we're playing GTA 5 and Resident Evil 2 right now, so I just don't have time for another game. We can do that sometime. I didn't even think of that, Chrome. She says, hey, Curtis, just wondering, will you ever do a pop vinyl tour of your figures? You know what? I'm going to wait, though, Chrome, because what I want to do is, for any of you that collect the pops know, see, I collect them because I like them, and I like these characters. I don't worry about value on stuff. That's why they're all out of the box. I'm not going to resell them anyway. They're here because I enjoy the characters. But they won't stand up worth a shit. So many of them are just, the weights are poorly distributed. What I'm thinking of doing is like that table, in every place that I'm displaying them, I think I'm going to get mats of Velcro. And like, for instance, over here, I don't know, I'm pointing and I don't know what you guys can see. Like, for instance, over here, oh, I'm pointing. I'm pointing the wrong way. I got to see what you guys are seeing in the background. Over this shoulder. Okay, what you guys are seeing right over here. I got a bunch of pops on that table. Over here, I've got a bunch more. What I'm thinking of doing is gluing a mat of Velcro onto the tabletop, and then putting Velcro on the bottoms of the feet of the pop so I can actually display them and have them all stand up there. And my wife is wildly creative with crafts and stuff like that, so I will need her assistance because I am not. Let's see. Don't forget, if you go to Paris one day, you can ask. You want to know the best place to eat. On bon repas. Okay, it was on. Again, I'm just a disappointing person to have a meal with because my tastes are so limited. Nendoroids? I don't know what those are, Prism. I haven't seen those. I'll have to look them up. Yeah, Curtis, brother, he says you got to play Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. To break it down to you, it's like a Minecraft GTA 5 free world game, but in Dragon Ball world. So awesome. Yeah, everybody's saying it's great, brother. All the friends I have, and I don't have any in real life other than Spaz Kid, all the friends I have here online who have played it have said it's fantastic. And my pizza's here. That's why the dogs are going nuts. Gotta go, guys. I hate to... Are you going to New York in July? No? Look up Rose's Pizza. Yeah, you'll enjoy it. Like I say, it's down in Penn Station. If you get down in there, ask any of the winos or the crackheads. They'll tell you where it is. You'll have to give them a buck, but they'll tell you where it is. Guys, I gotta go eat my pizza. Thank you for this conversation. As always, made my day. This was a blast again. Thank you for hanging out with me. When we stream during the week, we'll get back to the games. I still haven't put GTA 5 on the new computer. I'm going to work on that hopefully tonight or tomorrow. Get GTA 5 back on here. As you guys saw, Resident Evil 2 is running great on there. But I would give you guys the outro and everything, but it's gonna have to be shit canned for today because I smell pizza. And yes, I have wood. And yes, I'm gonna stop the broadcast before I stand up and you guys see that I have tiny little wood. Talk to you later.